Welcome to the Comfort via Discomfort podcast. My name is Adam Beaumier, and I am so happy and grateful that you're here with me right now. Embracing discomfort has literally saved my life, and it's now my mission through this podcast to help others around the world lean into discomfort and vulnerability so that they can live their best life. Welcome to episode 17 of the CVD podcast with Richard Mensah. This one is called The Overnight Success That Took 3 Years. And the reason that it's called that is because Richard is a startup founder. He's a tech entrepreneur. And oftentimes, especially in the startup world, whenever we see a company, pop up out of nowhere or hit a specific milestone, like a certain number of downloads or raising a certain amount of seed funding, we tend to say like, oh my goodness, they came out of nowhere. Like they're an overnight success. But that's very, very rarely how it happens. And Richard knows this because he's been a startup founder or co-founder of 4 or 5 different companies now. So he spent a lot of time behind the scenes, like starting something from scratch. He sees a problem in the world that he wants to address. He tries to get different people to join him in his venture. And then they go at it, right? They don't have a blueprint. There's no blueprint for startups, really. It's how do there's a problem and we think we know how to solve it, but we're going to try, 40,000 things and everything under the sun to try and understand this problem better and to try and find an actual solution for it. So he's done that multiple times. He knows what that life is like. And I really admire him for his grit, his perseverance, and his willingness to just really try and solve some pretty big problems. So his current company is called Sally. I'll put the link in the description so that you can go check it out. It's specifically geared towards building a community for creators because creators like me, being a podcaster, we spend a lot of time behind the scenes actually producing our content. And oftentimes that can lead to burnout because it takes a tremendous amount of hours, especially at the beginning. For me, like doing one podcast episode from the very beginning to the time that I post like 3 promo videos on social media, it's usually about 8 or 9 hours an episode. And so I'm working really hard to try and lower that. But the point is that it's a lot, right? And you don't always see that behind the scenes, but being a creator and being a startup founder, Richard understands this. So his current company, Sally, is really trying to build a community for creators so that they can learn more about the industry and really connect with each other so that they can avoid burnout, because obviously that's not a good thing. So in this episode, we talk about his current company, Sally, but we really go way back to when he was 5 years old and saw his first airplane when he was living in Ghana. That really, really inspired him and was like, whoa, what is that? Like, I want, it really just sparked a lot of interesting creativity inside him. We talk about that. We talk about the first time that he was really introduced to the startup world back in 2014 when he joined a competition called the Halt Prize with a couple of his friends. We also talk about the 2 or 3 other startups that he has founded or co-founded and what he's learned from each of those different experiences, because every single time he's done it, he's learned something new and he's taken what he's applied and now he's using it in his current startup. So whether you're in the startup space or not, this episode is going to be particularly interesting because Richard has a lot of experience in this industry, and he just has a lot of really, really interesting things that he's learned along the way. Because with a startup, there's no blueprint. You just have to try everything under the sun to try and solve a problem. You have to be able to be flexible and to pivot and to persevere and to have determination and motivation. So he's a really cool guy. He's got some really cool stories, and I hope you're ready. Here we go. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Comfort via Discomfort podcast. Today, I have my friend Richard here. Richard, super happy that you're here, that you're on the podcast.
Yeah, super excited myself. Looking forward to sharing all those discomfortable moments I ever had. So it's like, it's fine. I think I have a lot to share there, and I think I love what you're doing, Adam. Highlighting people's discomfort and how it helped them become much better people and how it helped them grow. to becoming better versions of themselves is really, really impactful. And I can see this becoming like really huge in the long run. So yeah, I'm excited to be part of it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, super happy that you're here and appreciative of your time. I know that you're pretty big into the tech startup world. You're running one right now. We'll definitely get into that. But as we sort of mentioned before we started recording here, like everybody's a beginner at some point. Everybody goes through struggles and discomfort, and I'm really excited to learn more about where you started and how you got through those moments. Like I know that obviously you're from Ghana and now you're here running a startup in the US. And we worked together when we did our master's program at Halt International Business School. But I don't know much of the details, right? Like you had just told me that you did the Halt Prize and when you were in Ghana in 2014. So we'll definitely get into that. Would love to learn the details. But why don't we get started with a little introduction? So tell us who you are, like as a person, and also what you do for a living right now.
So who I am as a person. That's a long story. All right, so so I think a highlight of who I am as a person is I am very how do I put it in words? So there's a lot of things that I care about, right? I care about making impact. I care about changing the status quo. I care about giving power to those who are a little like underserved, or people who don't have the ability to like get the right resources to be able to build something meaningful with their life. So it's like I've always been thinking about what can I do with my life to be able to leave the world like much better than I came to see it. So that's a bit of Richard as a 5-year-old. I mean, how I got into like technology and this whole journey was it started with like a plane when I was 5 years old. So like when I was 5, we lived by the airport in Ghana. So it was like there was a plane that flew over our apartment someday. And I was like, wait, there's something off here. Like, how is this huge object with all these people inside able to fly? And
I'm
how
just
am I
picturing
not
you
able to
like as a
fly?
5-year-old just being like, whoa.
Yeah, like it's so awesome. It looked like a UFO to me, or like a spaceship. It was like so big, and it was flying over. I was like, "There's something here. Like, what is making this thing fly? Like, there's nothing holding it up." So, like, to me, I'm like, okay, there's something off. I need to figure this out. So that was my on ramp to like, okay, so I need to know how it works, and I sort of like saved up to go buy an encyclopedia. Um, I think my school had an
Wait,
open day.
as a 5-year-old, you saved up to buy an encyclopedia?
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't know any I don't know if I've ever met anybody that that has said that. Wow, that's so interesting. Why an encyclopedia?
So we didn't have internet back then, and like I needed a way to find out all the information I wanted. So I was like, encyclopedia. I mean, it wasn't really encyclopedia was the answer at the moment. I was like, okay, so how do I find out more about how this is working?
Right.
So my school had like an open day sometime, and I was like, you know what? Like, I was looking through the books, and this book was talking about so many different things: how TVs work, how airplanes work, how so many things work. And I'm like, yes, this is what I need. This is what I needed.
Gotcha. So this was this was almost like a whole library in one little book where you could just flip through and
Exactly.
learn about all these different things. Okay,
Exactly.
understood.
I remember that book was yellow. So the yellow book with like red color, red like text on the big page, on the front page. So it was pretty exciting. I got that book and I couldn't stop reading it for like a couple of months. Just like, I mean, aside from homework that I had to do, which was always boring, of course. But like this was the fun part where I had to like think about what I wanted to actually do with the information I was getting with it. And I actually learned a lot, right? Because initially before reading that book, I thought like TVs had people inside them. Like, you know, those cathode ray
Right.
TVs? Yeah, I was like,
I'm pretty sure you're not the only person that thought that. I might have also thought that, like little puppets behind the TV
yeah.
or something.
There was a time I actually went behind the TV trying to figure out, like, open it up so I can see how the people inside. It was like when I was like younger. So it was like, so that book was, to me was more like the eye opener to like how like most tech, not just tech, but pretty much anything actually works. Um, so fast forward, I went to high school, did studied science because of my intrigue with the whole like science and engineering and everything. So I did physics, chemistry, biology, and advanced math in Ghana. So there's this high school in Ghana called Mfantupim. It's like a boarding high school. That was very uncomfortable, just so you know, because it's like changing from like living with your parents to going like so far away from home, like 4 hours from home. Then you like with a all male boarding school. That's very different. Switch.
Right. So you were living
Mhm.
with your parents, and then you
Mhm.
went to an all male boarding school that was like 4 hours away. Right.
Yeah,
So how old were you when you started this?
it's like 11.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah,
How was that? Like was that a big shock?
yeah, very big shock. I mean, I was quite sad. I mean, your parents are taking you. You're going to go there. You're excited about going there, and once you get there, it's like, okay, so now they're going to actually leave you over there with all these other strangers. You have no idea who they are. And it was like, okay, this is weird. And so, like, I was happy in the beginning when I got there, like, yeah, guys, like a field trip. We're going to see this other part of the country. Like, it's in Cape Coast, right? So we live in our car in Cape Coast. So we get to Cape Coast, and I get in the school set up and everything. Then in the final moments, they hit you that, okay, so they're about to leave and like leave you behind for
You're
the
like
first time.
you're like realizing it in the moment. You're like, oh
Yeah.
shit, they're actually gonna leave me here.
Yeah. Because I mean, conceptually, when you think about it, it's like, okay, like, yeah, it's fine, I get it. But when you're in the moment of when it's actually happening, it's like, this is crazy. So I remember them leaving and me just like sitting alone and like sobbing inside. Like, so if I had any issue, I have to like get a 4 hour bus ride on the way home. Like, really, this is so far. Um, and I think after that happened, I was like, I mean, the first few hours was like quite sad, but after that, I began to feel like, okay, so most of all these other guys also parents who left them first years, so it's like, so we could like bond on that kind of thing, like
All of our parents left us. Let's get together and
exactly.
talk about it.
I know, right? It's just like a reason for us, like just start a conversation, like get to know each other. At least it's not just me going through that. So like, I think that's when I sort of like try to like talk to other folks to understand how their background and their experience and how they ended up where they ended up. And well, it's quite a good experience though. So yeah, so that was that one. And I mean, fast forward again. There's so many things, but like I'm just fast forwarding
Sure, yeah.
to when I went to college. So I actually thought I was going to go to college to study aerospace engineering because I felt I like planes and I got excited about planes early on, and I was going to do something with
Hmm.
planes somehow. But in Ghana, I was supposed to like pick a major, and I got in for computer science, and I was like bumped out. I was like, wait, what is this computer science thing? Like, who cares about it?
Like, I want to build an airplane. Like, I want
I know.
to.
I want to build a real airplane that can fly, that I can actually sit inside. But then I just like, you know what? This is not what I wanted. This is so sad. But like, let me give it a go and see how that plays out. So first semester I tried. I mean, that's around the time I got my first like actual laptop for myself. So I tried learning on I think C programming, and it wasn't too bad because to me it was just like translating instead of building like actual hardware stuff. You can now like build software that all you need is like internet connection in a laptop. With hardware, you need to go get all the stuff and the tooling and all of that before you can be able to make anything meaningful. So I was like, oh, this is actually quite freeing in some sense. So
Right.
that was around the time where I just like built my first Android application, which became a startup, and so many other things happened after that.
Right.
And
So how old were you when you built your first Android app or startup there?
so that was like 18, 19.
18 or 19. So
Yeah.
how did you go from like literally not knowing anything to like you wanted to go into aerospace engineering,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden you're kind of forced into going to computer science instead.
Yeah.
And you have no idea about like what this is or about C or any of the other,
Mm-hmm.
coding languages. And then how long was it from the time that you started to the time that you like built this Android app, and what was that process actually like?
Okay. It took about a year.
Okay.
Since yeah, about a year when I went to college for that one. Process wise, I mean, I just feel like okay, so I'm in school for computer science, and I have no idea what's happening with computer science. There's so many other people in class who may already know stuff about this thing. So to me, it was like, okay, so how do I like learn enough to be able to like, I mean, contribute to class somehow, or not like fail the class? So I think that was when I sort of like myself, even though we didn't have really good internet, I still like just try like get a couple of videos from other people and download them, and just watch videos and like mimic exactly what the video is doing. I don't know if you've seen these videos on YouTube. There's so many tutorials on YouTube by
I'm
mainly.
not a coder whatsoever, so this is like a
Yeah.
completely foreign language, completely foreign thing to me. Like my wife
Yeah.
Shelby, as you know, like went into data analytics, so she knows a little bit
Hmm.
about that stuff. I
Yeah.
know nothing. I know nothing about C, C++, C++, HTML, Python. I'm
Yeah.
literally just saying words that I know. So
Or you
I
sound
know
like you
nothing
know
about those
other
things.
words.
I know the different programs because I see them talked about on LinkedIn, and that's it. I don't know anything about them. I don't know why you would use one language over the other. No idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me it was quite a learning journey because I think when I started with C, right, I thought it was quite strange because it actually feels like learning a new language. So it's like trying to
Right.
learn either Spanish or like Portuguese or something like that. It's like literally a new way of communicating, but with a computer. So I think my method of getting it was I need to keep practicing as much as I could, and just trying so many things. I mean, the first few months was like sad or very painful because everything I tried to write didn't work out because you write, and it's like run, and it's like red line, red line, red line, red line. It's like,
It's like
what the
fail,
heck?
fail.
I know. It's like everywhere. It's like, I think it also requires a sort of like some resilience, right? Because if, particularly when you're learning something like programming, if you don't really care as much, you leave it early because it can be so demoralizing, like because of all the errors that can pop up early on. So I think my first few months was like, yeah, was quite painful, quite hard. Like you think you're doing it right and it's not right, and you have to go back and you realize that, oh, what's this semicolon you forgot to add, and it's so frustrating that
Literally, yeah,
thing.
literally in code, it's like the tiniest. Like you forgot a comma, the
I
whole
know.
thing fails, and you got to go through like 100 lines of code to figure out where the comma's missing and stuff like that.
Exactly. There was like a day where I spent 3 days trying to figure out what was wrong, and I just
Mm.
discovered that it was like a semicolon that was missing. And I'm like, really, 3 days, like freaking out or trying to figure this thing out, like thinking about it day and night, and just come and see a semicolon.
You're
Honestly.
like dreaming about code.
Oh yeah, it actually happens. Like
I've had
sometimes,
I've,
like
Yeah,
go ahead.
I've had dreams about work, not about code, but literally about like PowerPoint presentations. Like
Yeah.
when I was a consultant, I was dreaming. It was the weirdest things. I was literally dreaming. I was watching my brother and my dad play football, and I was making a
Hmm.
PowerPoint presentation about it. Like it was awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it actually happens. I think I had something similar when I had an internship, right? So like I had a first like back end developer internship like after my first year in college, and there's this problem I couldn't solve. Was like we're trying to build like a chatbot that sort of like automated the Scrum meetings. So like it's going to check with each team member like where they are, what's pending, what could be done to help improve their like writing process flow, and basically it will accumulate all the answers together and come back to the manager and be like, this is where you need to focus on. Maybe you should be talking to the people on this team because they're having problems and all that stuff. So we try to automate instead of having a meeting about that, like having a bot check individually with everybody to come back and like help the manager move faster and save time. There was this part of it which was like almost impossible for me to figure out. Like that was my first actual like programming job or like software engineering job, and like I couldn't figure it out for like a week or two. And there was a time where I went to sleep and I was just like so sad and frustrated, and I actually dreamt about the solution somehow.
Oh,
And
that's
I went into
interesting.
work the next morning and I implemented it. So I think I was sleeping, but I was still like trying to figure it out.
That's
So
so
it's
funny.
like
Your brain's literally on autopilot.
exactly. So I'm like, woke up in the morning, I'm like, I think I have an idea. Let me try this out. Then I went to the office one the morning and tried out like we're like, yes, this is perfect. And I think I've had a bunch of other like engineering people who've also gone to something similar, like just sleep and just wake up, and then what they've been thinking about for like days just becomes much easier to remember, like much really apparent to them, like super easily.
Yeah, yeah, super interesting. And I mean, when you were in those moments of like super frustrated, kind of
Hmm.
sad, being like, I don't know the freaking answer. Like, how did you get yourself through that? Was it something that you know said to yourself? Was it different activities, or were you leveraging teammates or other people? How did you get through those moments?
I think for me it was mostly looking at like things that are out that have been built by other people and making myself feel like, okay, so one day I'll be able to build something like this, even though it sucks now. So it's like keeping your eye on the prize. It's like you look at, I mean, I was struggling back then, but you look at the software, like let's say you look at Facebook and you look at Instagram, like, oh, they've been able to do all this. I mean, someone wrote all this thing, right? So maybe in the future I'll be able to do that. And also like relying a lot on other people who are much more ahead of me. So I made friends with some of the really good ones in class and just try to like pick their brains on every single thing I could. I mean, sometimes even stalk them to their apartments and just not stalk them like stalk, but like literally like literally like pester them all the way to like their place just so I can learn as much as I can, and ask all the questions I could. So just creating a peer group around myself. Also taking a break. Sometimes you'll realize that you need a break. You need to like just disconnect and come back later.
I was going to ask you about that because I mean, like, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only person that when you think of like a coder or a software developer, or you see them in movies, like we literally think of like people in their basements, like just on their computers, like eating Doritos and drinking Red Bull and just trying to work around the clock. So what was your work environment like? You know, were you working that much and like, how did you disconnect? How did you take a break to make sure that you could keep going in a mentally healthy way?
Yeah, I think I did a lot of walking. So when I'm stuck or like something wasn't really going according to plan, I typically just put everything down, like put music in my ears and just go for a walk, no direction whatsoever. Just walk and just observe people doing their own thing. So that's when I was on campus, I'll just walk around, just watch people living their lives and just reflecting. And sometimes your mind you just go back to the problem again, but then sometimes you just like see interesting things happening and just like get intrigued by them. So that one, and taking a break also requires like, I mean, when I say take a break, I didn't mean take a break from like just quitting. Sometimes you can watch a movie or something like that if you want to just, or like watch something that is not related to what you're doing. So like go read about corporate finance, which okay, it's still like
you're taking a break and you're going to read corporate finance. Oh my goodness, that's so funny. No. Take a break and go read the encyclopedia, right?
I know. I actually fell into reading a lot in college. So like that was my mom introduced me to this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. So it was like by Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah, I'm reading that book right now, actually.
I got obsessed with it back in college when she introduced me to that, and like ever since that book, I just kept reading all such books like 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, and I mean all of them, all the books you should know about. So it's like that was my pastime. Sometimes I'll just like take a week off and just like go read something random. And I actually got into, I mean, I haven't really read a lot of like fiction books because of the fact that I always feel like when I read something, I want to be able to use the knowledge.
I'm in the exact same boat with you. I find it very difficult to read a fiction book because of the same reason, right? And of course, there are definitely lessons in fiction books. That's right. It's not like they're completely useless or anything, but I'm in the same boat with you. I'm like, I want to read something and apply it to my life. Like I want to read something for the purpose of trying to make my life better, essentially. So that's one of the only exactly, reasons I read. Like that's what motivates me to read. Same
boat actually, because I tried fiction for a couple of times, and I was like, this is fun. Some of them are really good, but I wasn't really. I just felt like I was wasting time for some reason.
Right.
So when I went to the nonfiction books, I was like, okay, so this is actually I can actually use in real life. So that was how I got into like some of my pastimes was reading. So books like that. Again, I keep mentioning that internet is always expensive because in Ghana it's not like cheap to get really good internet. You have to like plan for it, like because the average, cost of internet is about like 10-20% of your monthly salary per month, which doesn't make sense. So yeah, most people just like just only use it for the most important things. I mean, there are folks that just buy a bunch of internet and just like spend it all on Instagram and Twitter and like scrolling through TikTok. But I mean, for someone like me, I wouldn't do that. So yeah.
Right. Understood. Awesome. So I mean, like, so we're talking about, getting into app development and everything and building your first Android app and then having your first internship as a back-end software developer. Before we sort of move into maybe the next stage of your life, what advice would you have for anybody who's looking to get into coding right now? What would be your sort of like push for them? What's their first step? How do they get into it? Something like that.
I think one main thing you should know is your why. Why do you want to learn coding? If you're just going to say I want to learn coding because there's a ton of money in there, I don't think you last that long. I mean, you could last that long, but it's going to take much more effort to get to where you need to get to be that stage you want before you can actually start seeing those results. So I think the best way to see coding is see it as a tool or a skill set you can use to achieve something. So the question is, what do you actually want to do with your life? Do you want to build something? Do you want to help people who are building something, move faster? What do you want to do with a skill set that goes beyond working in big tech or making a bunch of money and getting a bunch of perks at the office or all of that? Because that gets boring after a while, because I know a bunch of friends from all these big tech companies and everything who are really bored and they just want something to actually do apart from just making the money. They don't really care about the money as much because that is not what gets them excited. They want to actually do something meaningful. So know your why behind why you want to get into coding, and once you figure out what that why is, let that be your North Star, because it's not going to be easy. It's going to be very challenging, and there's a lot of effort that you need to do required to be able to get to the point where you're competent enough to be able to contribute. So know your why, make that your North Star. And mistakes are fun. I enjoy the mistakes because you're literally going to make mistakes 99% of the time. So
you're literally going to forget all the commas.
Yeah. So you just want to make sure that when it's not working, you don't easily give up because of the fact that it's not working. Exactly why knowing your why is important, because that's what's going to keep you going when you try for the first 3 months and you have not made much progress, and you're not able to build anything meaningful, and that's what's going to keep you still learning how to code.
Yeah. That's a great piece of advice. I hear it over and over again. People always talking about knowing your purpose and your why, and just being intentional about it, because it'll keep you. I like it because it keeps you a little bit more level. When you are experiencing a lot of success, it kind of pulls you down a little bit and keeps you grounded. And then when you're down in the dirt, sad, crying because you don't know what the problem is with your software code, it also sort of picks you up and being hey, you can figure this out, keep going, this will contribute to your why and your purpose. So, you kind of touched a little bit earlier, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you touched earlier on your why and your North Star, doing social good and being able to use tech as a tool to make social impact. But when you were first going through, computer science and whatnot, did you have a why back then? And what was it if you did?
First of all, I told you I wanted to do aerospace engineering, right?
Yeah, right.
So I wanted to be in the air flying planes or building them. So I think to me it was just figuring it out. I was figuring out okay, so what can this actually do? What can I do with this? And I think that's when the whole prize thing became happened, and that's when my why began to form.
Yeah. And just before you get into that, so I just want to say what the Halt Prize is, because I'm sure that there will be just listeners that don't know exactly what it is. So it's essentially a social entrepreneurship competition. And Richard, you can add on to this if I miss something or whatever, but essentially it's a competition that takes place all over the world where different groups of entrepreneurs are trying to solve a specific challenge that is released for a given year. So in 2022, there's a specific challenge that the Halt Prize organization will release, and then essentially you are building a startup to achieve that goal, and you present at a local level, and a regional level, and a national level, and try to win the prize of $1 million that is basically given towards your startup.
Yep.
Did I miss anything?
No, you just got it all right. So yeah.
Awesome. Nailed it. So you joined the Halt Prize, you said, while you were in Ghana in 2014, correct?
Yeah. So that was the first ever Halt Prize at the University of Ghana. I was like, what is this Halt Prize? What is this? Sounds intriguing. So we had a campus director who, eventually became friends with, but he had all these flyers around the campus, and I noticed it, and I was like, you know what, let me just put in an application for this and get a team together, because it sounded intriguing, right? To win $1 million and solve people's actual problem, like make the world better to doing that. I was like,
yeah, of course. Like
that's like
who,
no
like,
brainer. Yeah,
of course it's a no brainer. Like, wait,
yeah,
what? I get to pitch an idea, and if you
yeah.
like it, you give me $1 million. Okay.
Yeah, it was like a no brainer. I was like, oh, that's cool. So it was like that was around the time I just finished my first internship, just like getting into it, and I was like, cool. So what do we want to do? So there was a challenge. I think the first challenge that we had was early childhood education. Yeah, it was about building, creating a new way for helping children like in underserved countries and underserved communities. So it was like, I mean, train their children because of the fact that the first few years of a child's life are the most like impactful years because once they have good upbringing and they have good, like good sort of like tooling and good systems for them at that point is actually going to help like inform the trajectory of their life because if they have
Yeah.
good early childhood education,
It's
going to like
actually,
kill
yeah,
anything.
it's actually crazy how important like the first like 5 years of a
Yeah.
child's life are, and how, I mean, there's a lot of statistics around this, and I've become more knowledgeable about this in the last year or so, just because with the company that I help run, we have a partner that's called 1 Million Teachers, and they are based in Africa actually, and they work in about 17 different countries, and they train teachers to become the best teachers that they can be so that they can deliver the best quality education from kindergarten through grade 12. And the CEO and I actually went to we did our undergrad together, and so he was sharing with me a lot of statistics about early childhood education and how important it is. And I was actually pretty blown away by some of the statistics. I don't remember them off the
Mm-hmm.
top of my head, but it's really kind of crazy how important the first 5 years were.
Yeah.
So anyways, back to the whole prize. So this was the challenge, and
Yeah.
you found out about it just on a flyer, like that was like stuck to the wall on the university or something
Yeah.
like
It's
that.
like, I was
So
like,
so yeah. So what happened after that? How'd you get a team together?
oh, the team. So the team was mostly from other folks that I pretty much worked with. So we back a bit. So once I got the hang of coding, during my first summer break in college, I didn't actually go home. I stayed on campus for the whole time to
Gotcha.
learn
So
Python.
before you were like, my parents dropped me off and
Yeah,
left me, and now I mean,
yeah,
college, typical college kid, you're like, no, I don't, I
yeah. I'm
don't
not
want.
going back home. The home is so boring. I want to stay on campus and figure out a bunch of things out. So that was why I so like learned a bit of Python, built like this whole like hospital management system using Python. Then I also learned a bit of like video editing using After Effects and like video creation and all that 3D editing. So that was pretty fun. So it's like, yeah. So during that, like we had like a course thingy. I met other people who also like went the whole journey. They were all like senior to me, right? So I was like first year, just finishing going to second year, and these guys were like third year, fourth year, and they were all in the same program. It was
But
like
that's the way to do it. You can learn so much from these people, right? Even if you guys don't get the
exactly.
$1 million, like you're building a team where you're like, you always hear that saying, like, don't be the smartest person in the room. Richard's
Yeah.
like, I don't want to be. I'm third and fourth year. Let's go.
I know, right? I was like the youngest guy. It was like so funny. So like we're like doing. So after that, we just stayed in touch, and I saw the whole prize, and we're like, Joe, like let's actually build this. Let's do this. And they're like, yeah. There was so we're a team of four. Was okay. I mean, it was one of my other co-founders from my second startup, but like basically no, that was the first one. So the co-founder of the first startup, yeah. So we just formed a team, and we decided to just take it on. So we spent a couple of weeks putting out a presentation, doing some research, coming up with a solution, and I think we won. We won third place in our campus. So again, obviously, we're bummed out because we didn't get first place. But I think to me that experience was like, wow, like this is so cool. Like all the work we had to do to get to the point of like putting out our idea and like seeing how many people were also pitching had different points of view on the same problem. I think that was like eye opening to me. I was like, you know what, like, this is actually really good. It's can actually impact all these people like positively. I mean, imagine if we led like technology to such a things like solve real problems, not just like solve like surface level problems. It's like that's going to be really, really huge. So it's like that's when I started thinking about like doing something that actually changes things for people and makes lives much better for a lot of people out there.
Mhm.
So that was my
Right.
inspiration
And
moment. Yeah.
that's great. And so when take me through a little bit of the Halt Prize, because I mean,
Mhm.
again, I'm gonna ask this not because it's necessarily the way that I think,
Yeah.
but like when you hear about like software developers or people that are big into tech, and now you're doing a presentation, right? You might not think that these people are necessarily the most skilled to give this presentation. And I think you mentioned before we started recording that this was your first big time, like getting in front of people and presenting. So, what was that like? Were you scared? Were you nervous? And
Yes.
if so, like how'd you get through it?
I was shaking throughout the whole presentation. So that was not like I was like freaking out. And I mean, we presented it together as a team, but there was a part of which was mine, and I had to like say it and convince everybody else that this is the idea. So it was like, yeah, I was freaking out. Yeah, it was crazy. I was actually very glad it was over, and I think the team before us was really, really good. So I was like, damn it! Like,
did that add more pressure?
Yeah, it did actually add more pressure. There was a team of like debaters, right? So we had a debating club, and these guys have been debating and doing law stuff, like lawyers and stuff. So like they have the ability to like convince people. You can even sell them. You can sell people stones and rocks, and people will buy a bunch of money, spend a bunch of money on that. So I was like ask against people like that. I was like, okay, let me try what I can do. So that was my first ever actual like business sense like presentation to like a big audience, so like it was huge, like esteemed set of panelists over there, and yeah, it was scary. But then I was also super excited inside about being able to do this for the first time. It's like, yeah, I remember not being able to sleep the night before because of everything that happened. But yeah, it was a good experience. I think all in all, I mean, I would have loved to win the campus one so I could get a shot at the $1 million. But I think I left the whole thing with a new sort of like mission or new like perspective on how like my life could be, like what I could actually do to make life much better for people, not just like through like building software to make money, but then actually also adding impact to that. So that was like a huge moment for me.
Yeah. So you added another piece to your why, or you sort of adjusted your why based on that moment. And was it just the experience itself in terms of presenting and sharing your idea with people, or was there like another startup where you were like, holy shit, like there are so many people that could like add a lot of value to the startup world, or to, make some social impact? Like, what was it about the event that really like kind of got you fired up?
I think it was, I mean, we were in school and we had like 10 teams presenting. So it was me like sitting back and imagining like all the other universities in the world and how many teams I was representing, and all of them are trying to figure out this one small problem of early childhood education. That skill of like we're all together trying to solve this thing was like, oh wow, like this is really impactful. Like people actually want to help like the world move forward. It's not just about making a bunch of money and just like buying a jet or a yacht or something like that. That's pointless. Just like actually creating something that creates so much value that even the people who are like, I mean, at the bottom of the economy have the chance to like come up and actually have a much better like quality of life.
Yeah.
So that was like, yeah, let's solve this. Like, let's do this. This is what we're waiting for. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool to think about how like you as an individual can definitely, make some impact. But when there is like this bigger thing, right, where there's thousands and maybe even hundreds of thousands of people across the world that are trying to solve one specific problem, you're like, holy shit, like this is cool. We can get a lot of people together to try and like, there are a lot of motivated people that want to do some stuff, right? So that is definitely pretty cool. And I remember sitting in on some of the Halt Prize competitions when we were, doing our master's program from 2018 to 2020. And some of the ideas, I'm like, damn, like that is actually really cool. I never would have thought about that. And you also mentioned that, bringing together different people and seeing the different types of perspectives and ideas and contributions was really cool. And I mean, you and I obviously worked on a team together when we did a innovation competition. The IXL competition. And I mean, even that, we had 5 people from 5 different countries with 5 completely different backgrounds coming together and just throwing a bunch of different ideas together. It was really, really cool. And it was inspiring because, you're brought up, I don't know, in society, a lot of times we are rewarded for being right or being the smartest person in the room. But I don't know about you, but like for me, when I was, experiences like that really allow me to be like, hey, it's okay to be wrong or to not have the best idea or to even contribute just a little piece, because there are so many people with so many cool ideas. Like, give them space to open up and talk about it and see what they can contribute, because they have, totally different experiences than you. And right, there's no way that you're going to be right about about everything. So
Yeah.
it's really cool to celebrate that diversity and the different ideas, and to really move forward together as a team.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why. Research saying that the most diverse teams are the ones that, do well. The most diverse companies are the ones that like do well. So it's like the fact that you have so many different perspectives actually gives you a competitive advantage in any problem, because you don't just have one set of people, one set of backgrounds like tackling a problem. You have it from different angles, and when you have all these different angles being brought to the table, like, you can obviously see the best solution once you think objectively about what that solution is. So I think, there's huge power to getting people from different backgrounds, different countries, different walks of life to tackle one problem. And I think most companies need to like optimize for creating such teams and environments and make it super easy for them to actually find the right solution and actually be able to solve problems in the long run. If you think about us, the reason why I also chose Halt primarily was because of the fact that it was like really diverse, like with like 97% diverse, something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, I love it. Like, I can meet people from all over the world, like get their perspectives, try and learn a few languages. I started learning a bit of Portuguese and a bit of Mandarin, and a bit of like other languages. Hindi. Just because I had friends from all over, I was like, okay, I want to learn your language too and see how you think, and like tell me about your culture, and like that gives you that perspective that most people who just had like one way of seeing things or one sort of like background don't have. Because once you have that different perspective, you actually are more open-minded and know that your way is not always going to be the right way, because there's another right way in a different country or from a different kind of person who is not you. So you want to be open and willing to listen to that.
Absolutely. And it affects all your different relationships. It affects how you approach problems. It affects, how you communicate with your friends or your spouse, because you're willing to be wrong. You're willing to listen. You're willing to see the other side of things and willing to adjust afterwards. So definitely really interesting, and super happy that you've had that experience multiple times in your life, and hopefully you have it again. I'm sure in the startup world, you're bringing together, totally unrelated people and really trying to solve a problem. So that's really great. And so let's get back to the Halt Prize. So you finished in third place. You kind of had this new piece of your why that was added, another piece of your mission that was driving you forward. And so this was 2014. So it was about 8 years ago. So what's happened since then? Like, what was the next step after that?
Oh, it's a lot of stuff. Okay. I don't know how long we have. All right. But so right after that, that was when I was like looking for meaningful problems to solve. And I noticed in Ghana, like, not just in Ghana, but I've realized it's in some other countries, but in Ghana, like, when you're in the city, you have all these city infrastructure being like defaced with all these posters and all these flyers and everything. And I think where we used to live in Accra, there was like the street where like all the street lights were covered with ads of people, like small businesses trying to like show their stuff for people to come and buy. So it's like, to me, it was not nice. I felt like the city was getting dirty because everything that the city created, all the parts of the city was covered with stickers and flyers of people trying to promote their goods and services. And like, this feels off. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to build something about that. I'm going to solve it. So that's when we built. I think the idea was more like, we called it Me Notice. So the idea was like, instead of having
it was called what? Sorry?
Like Me Notice.
Me Notice?
Yeah, like My Notice, or Me Notice.
Me Notice,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but we just made a Me Notice. And the idea was like, okay, so instead of having to post your flyer like physically on the wall, you could post it virtually on the wall using like AR, like augmented reality. So our idea, like, that to me was like, okay, so if we could move all these flyers to AR space, you could still like literally be walking around and seeing all the flyers, but then if you got out from AR, you could still like see your city as clean as it used to be without seeing any flyers over there.
Yeah, really interesting.
So we did it. We built that actually. We built a prototype. I got a team together and everything, and we built a prototype. Then we checked with a couple of brands that were interested in using it. But then we decided not to pursue it much further because we realized that we're hoping that Magic Leap would work out. I don't know if you know Magic Leap was this huge
No.
tech Silicon startup tech company that raised a bunch of money, like almost $1 billion, to go figure out a way to get a glasses that make it like easy to like go between AR space and like physical world. So they came up with a product and it was like way too expensive, and it was not like the iPhone moment of like AR, and it was not the best we could have. So it was like, I mean, people from Ghana would definitely not be able to buy that. So that was like off the table. And Google Glass also came out, and it was like, yeah, like no, like they had this huge thing on the side, and we're hoping that they figured out the AR problem. So we're hoping like there'll be like an iPhone moment for like augmented reality glasses, but still to now, there's still nothing like that. Hopefully, Apple figures it out again for like their headset or like whatever you call it, or their eyewear.
The Google,
device.
the Google Glasses, Glass or something like that. Yeah.
So that was the idea. It was like, but it was a really cool idea. I mean, people still say it's really viable. Like, so like a Pokemon Go, but for like seeing ads and like capturing them and like claiming rewards for seeing all these ads in virtual space and like interacting with them. So that was my solution. The problem I hated, it's still a problem. So eventually I might solve it like when the technology is right. Yeah.
Right. And let me ask you this. So this would have been then your third startup?
No, that would have been my second.
Your second. You had the Android app. Did you count that as okay? And then Halt Prize didn't really turn into a startup.
No, we're just like a pitch thingy. Yeah. So
right.
So this one was actually one that we got a whole team and everything together, and like
Gotcha. Because I really want to ask, because like obviously now you run a startup, and we can definitely talk about that. I'd love for people to understand what you're doing with your current startup. How many startups have you built? Just a quick side question. Total.
Well, my definition of startup was this like legally incorporated, so that would be like now 4.
Now 4. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
but then apart from that, I've done so many other things that are not legally
right. I mean, like you've built a lot of projects, and some of them have turned into companies, some of them haven't.
Yeah.
But the point that I'm trying to make and what I want to get at is, you went from really having this dream of aerospace engineering, and then into computer science, and into developing. You did your first Android app. You did the Halt Prize. And what I'd really like to ask you about is like, going from that to like actually building a startup is still sort of, at least to me, seems like another sort of big step, right? A lot of unknowns, a lot of things that you might not be familiar with. So like, take me back to that time where you were just like, all right, I have an idea, but I don't know how the fuck to do it. So like, how did you try and figure out how to actually build the startup? What was that process like for you?
Yeah, I think it was more, I was a technical guy back then, right? So the first one, let's go to the mobile Android app, which became a startup. So like, okay, so this is the idea. The problem there was like most of the mobile devices in Ghana like had like low memory. Like they had like, back in 2014, you had like 2 gig of memory on your phone, and smartphones are now like penetrating the whole like continent and the country. So, but then most people were primarily using Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at that time to like for their social needs, and these apps were taking most of their phone memory. So it's like, okay, so what if we build an app that incorporated Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter into one app? I'm using like the web views and use a compression algorithm to reduce the size of the app itself to like a very small size. It became like 1.7 megabytes, and people would use that instead of using like the native apps. So we built that one. All my friends were using it. So I think for me it was, I initially always thought that, okay, so once you have a startup, you just build it, and then people would just come and use it, and before you know it, it'd be everywhere in the world.
And it'll be $1 billion.
Yeah, then it'd be $1 billion. And I mean, that's what the stories here, right? You look at the media and you're like, okay, so how this person built a company or built this app, and the app became really huge, really fast, with like out of nowhere. The person barely even knew what's happening. He woke up the next morning and it was like 100 million people using it. I'm like, what the heck? So that's how I thought that was the way to do it. But it turns out that's not really the way to do it. So it's more
surprise.
Yeah. So I mean, the first one we had was more like using the kind of playbook, like let's build something and hopefully everyone's going to start using it. But I mean, it got some traction to a point, right? So I ended up getting all my classmates on it, and then after that, then I got my dad to download it too, because he was like, yeah, what are you working on? What have you been spending all your hours in the room for? So this is what I was doing. Okay, cool. Download it. But I think the lesson there for me was like I always thought was going to be like, okay, like I just have to learn how to code and build the thing I want to build. and all of a sudden I have a bunch of users and everything is going to be happy and exciting. Most people, primarily from a technical background, don't really consider that there's a lot more storytelling involved in like building a company. Like you have to be able to tell really good stories that captivate people about what you're building. There's a lot more, human to human networking and like building relationships that are actually beneficial for the company. And it's ideal if you build those relationships like prior to installing the company. And there's also like part of the whole company building part, which has to do with sort of like just being patient, because I mean, from the stories you hear, you think, oh, we're just going to like wake up one morning, everything is going to be like all over the place. But no, sometimes before it becomes an overnight success, it takes like a couple of years, which like 10, 5 years, whatever years it is, before that started to take off. And most people don't really like know of how painful the journey was for most before it took off, but they only see the part where it took off.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love that you point that out, because like the overnight success that took 3 years, like that's really what the title should be of the majority of them. Sure, every now and then there might actually be an overnight success, but like 99% of them are like the overnight success that took 3 years.
Yeah. So it's like, that to me was like, no. So I mean, I had to learn all that the hard way, right? So I built that one, push. I mean, we kept iterating the software itself on Android and improving it, but then realized that the product itself was fine. People liked it, but then we started to figure out a way to get more people to hear about the product, and we didn't have a bunch of money to spend on ads because we're still in Ghana, like it's too expensive, and we still didn't have anyone like influential on the network. We didn't have any influencers we could talk to about just like talking about us. So we didn't have anyone who could help amplify what we're doing. So it's like if we had pre-built all those relationships in advance, or like gone to people who had audiences, or started off building an audience first, that actually might have been much better for the company in the long run than just like building the software and just like running with it and hopefully like people just show up to use it from nowhere. So that was one of those lessons. So many others. We had an investor who came on board. So we had like a patent back then. Then the investor's conditions was like, oh, he wants his name on the patent before we file it in Ghana government, and that he's going to help. Send us to different, like bring us to the US and other like trade shows and other conferences so we can talk about the product. So we added his name to the patent and everything, and like kept talking to him. But then after everything was settled, and he put in like, I think it was small more amount of money, he didn't live up to his part of the bargain of getting us more exposure, like coming to more conferences and people like share more people. So he just like essentially just disappeared with his name on our patent of what we just built. So there's like a bunch of lessons in that regard, like all these different lessons from the first one that we also had a few things. I mean, naming is really important. People think names are not important, but they are, because you want to find network effects with the name you have. You want to name people that needs to remember. You don't want to name that people have to figure out, okay, so was this an X or a Y at the end of the name?
Right. And for anybody that doesn't know, what is that network effects that you did that you just mentioned? What does that mean?
Oh, okay. So network effects. So it's like you want something to be able to, like, it's more like easily shareable. So how do I simplify network effects to point? Everything is a network, right? I mean, you have a network with folks from Holt, so they're in the Holt network. You have folks from your college as a network. The question is, how do you create something that makes it easy for things to be shared within different networks of people? So whether it's online via social networks, which is like people you follow or people who follow you, or like in person with physical networks where people you know who know you, you want to reduce the barrier to entry so much that, I mean, people are more likely to be able to share what you're doing faster without having to be in the middle. There are a couple of laws that govern network effects. There's the Metcalfe-Lee's law, and there's another law, I don't remember the name fully, but it's like 2x for an n, which is like the size of your network is equal to 2 exponent the number of people in the network. I'm going to go to a whole like
getting super technical with it, but essentially you're trying to make something that people can easily remember and then easily share, right? And so you don't want something that can confuse people, or like you said, is it an X or is it a Z at the end of the name? Like you know exactly sort of like how to spell it and whatnot, right? So,
exactly.
So that people don't have. You're trying to remember. You're trying to remove as many barriers as possible to people spreading it throughout their network.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So
cool.
So that's what network effects is. So you want to make sure that you reduce that so that then people can start sharing as much as possible. And I mean, once you figure that part and make it super easy, whether it's via product, via word of mouth network effect, it makes it easy for them to like share it and get more people talking about what you're doing.
Gotcha. So how long were you in this startup? How long was this entire process before it ended or dissolved or you moved on to something else?
Well, it didn't really dissolve. My other co-founder is still working on it.
Oh, cool.
So I mean, I just like after that investor like thingy happened, I was like, yeah, this is too much. I was also in school too, so I was studying CS, and we were doing these really really complex math courses, discrete math and abstract math and stuff like that. That I could barely understand myself. So it's like, you know what, this is fine and all. We still haven't figured out how to make money. This whole thing needs little things that need to go right, and I prefer just focusing on school. So he was like, yeah, he's gonna keep working on it, and I just handed over all the code to him and everything. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go back to school and just keep
Gotcha.
going.
So how long were you involved in that startup?
It was about a year and a half.
Okay, about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And like you said, you learned quite a bit from it.
Yeah.
One of the things was you can't just build, that saying, build it and they will come. It's like, no, that's not how things work. Like we really have to involve people and whatnot. And, it's interesting because like at our time at Halt, we talked about a lot of human-centered design. And I started really getting into that and looking at companies that were really focused on human-centered design, which is, for anybody listening, all about like getting in the shoes of your customer to find out what they really want rather than basically trying to build something and being like, oh yeah, they're going to come. they're going to like this. Here we go. It's more of, interviewing them, actually talking to them. What are they actually going to like, and involving them almost in the iteration process so that you build something that is best suited for the target audience that you're actually trying to hit. Mm-hmm. So a lot of really interesting lessons. And I mean, I know that we can talk about a lot of different experiences between then and the company that you are running now. I just want to be cognizant of time here. So why don't we talk about a little bit about what company you're running now, and what you guys are doing there, and if there are any big lessons that you experienced between the startup that we just mentioned and the one that you're running now. Sure, you go ahead and mention those and really talk about sort of the process now. You're in your sort of like fourth startup now, and so I know that you talked about before we started recording, you're talking about going around the US and meeting with investors and building relationships. There's all types of, different fundraising or seed rounds and stuff like that. So you're familiar with a lot of this stuff now. Mm-hmm. So talk me through a little bit about what your company's doing, where you guys are at, and what you've learned along the way.
Yeah, happy to share that. There's a whole of discomfort that happened, like moving to US and from Ghana.
What year did you move to the US?
For Halt, 2018.
For Halt, okay. It was for
so okay. First time.
I wasn't sure if you came before that or not. I wasn't sure.
No, so I came before that in 2016, just for like 3 months, for like a work and travel thingy. But then I went back again to school and everything. So it's like the actual moving to the US in 2018 when I came for school, and I was like freaking out because I had to figure out an apartment in the US and life in the US and how credit scores work. What the heck is a credit score? And all of that stuff. But I want to dive straight into what we're building now. So basically what we're building now is we're building community and workflow tools for content creators. How did we get to this point? Back in 2016, thereabout in Ghana, during my second startup, I actually wanted to document my whole journey on YouTube, right? So I actually started a YouTube channel about what I was doing in Ghana and just trying to like record it like every week, every month, just to tell the story. But along the line, I just felt like it became too much with everything that was going on, and eventually I just stopped doing it. So to me, it was like, how many people in the world exist right now that are having really great life experiences that could be shared online for other people to learn from, but are not telling that or not sharing their stories? So it's like, essentially what we're doing is unlocking storytelling for the rest of the world using Sally and the software itself. The software is going to be like...
the company is called Sally, right? You said it very quickly. I just want to make sure that it's out there. The company is called Sally. And where can people find you? Is it sally.com?
Sally.co.
Sally.co. So sally.co. Perfect.
Yeah, that's .co. Yeah.
Awesome. So you said you're unlocking... Sally as a company is unlocking storytelling.
Yeah, unlocking storytelling for like the rest of the world. Right now, if you look at what's happening in the market, so not just in the market, but in how things are evolving when it comes to starting a company or building anything or building a business, you need to have an easy way of getting to your audience, or getting to an audience of people who are passionate about what you're building or what you're selling, whether it's in a small restaurant or building a big company or building a next tech unicorn or going to Mars or going to space, whatever it is. You need to figure out a way to get people excited about what you're working on or what you do, day after day. So right now, what we're seeing is that there's this huge movement towards like decentralized media, because traditionally media was like centralized, where you go watch CNN or CNBC to get everything, all the information. But now you check out things like podcasts, you check out things like newsletters, you check out YouTube, you spend more time on TikTok than actually reading all these other, going to these traditional forms of media. And we're like, okay, so what does the world look like in the next 10 years as a lot more things get automated to technology? We think it's going to be, people are going to be more creative and telling a lot more stories. And that is where most of the revenue is going to be coming from. That's where a lot of people will be spending their lives doing. And we're essentially trying to build the tooling and the community to empower those people in the long run, so that they can actually meet other people who are also doing something like that, create software to make it super easy for them to stay consistent and be able to like get perks for just telling great stories, essentially. For example, like what you're doing now, like when you hit your 50th episode, or we should be able to unlock so like wellness benefits for you just because you just hit your 50th episode, and not have to wait till like much later for you to like make money first before you're now able to like support yourself and whoever you bring on the team eventually as you grow this whole thing. But we want to be proactive about helping content creators get the best of the creation process. Because if you think about it, like if you work in tech, you write code, you don't get paid once your code is in the hands of users. You get paid every single day or every single week or every single month for the fact that you're writing code. But as a content creator, most people are just spending, as you already mentioned, 4 hours editing a video. And then, all the groundwork in the middle between like story and like outcome and the value being created. There's no way of rewarding creators in that bucket. And we think there's something there where we can actually tie in the creation process into like how rewards are given to content creators and everything. So that's essentially what we're doing. We're making it super easy for people to tell more stories, and we're making it super much more easy and fun for storytelling to be the next revered career path. Yeah,
really interesting. Yeah, I'm meeting every day, every week, every month. I'm meeting more and more people who are into content, creating content, whether you're in real estate or sales, or you're actually doing a podcast like myself. Like there is a content creation aspect behind it. We all hear about like the algorithm of Instagram and putting your videos out on TikTok and Snapchat and Clubhouse and all sorts of different platforms, and on YouTube and stuff like that, to get your word out and to hit your target audience. But I love what you're doing in terms of bringing people together. And as a creator, what would my experience be like? Am I able to link up with different creators on the platform, and are we able to exchange best practices? Like how does that actually work? What does the user interface sort of look like?
Yeah, so from a community point of view, it's more all these secret creator events you get access to by being a part of the community. So these are like events that are starting off in New York, but will later on expand to other parts of the country and other continents. So that's like, how do we create intimate spaces for creators to share best practices and share like their pains and their wins and everything together? And on the software front, we're sort of going to be integrating with all the tools you already use, right? So like you're using Riverside, you use what do you use for editing? I don't know what that is, but that's Apple. What's it called? iMovie or whatever.
No, I'm using an app on my iPad called LumaFusion.
Well, that too. So basically integrating all the tools you use, so we actually get a stream of data around like how your content is doing, from your goals to like how you're actually creating content. And as you even add more team members of like how they are contributing to your content and how your content is doing when you put it out there. And essentially what we're doing is we're making it much easier, automating a bunch of your content creation process. So like, for example, after this, you're supposed to like download the whole episode. So like instead of downloading, we're creating like this thing we call the data layer for content. So like where content can easily be switched or moved between different tools without having to like do it manually. And that way you can save a ton of time. And once you've even published that, we can actually track how the content is doing and sort of like issue rewards based on how the whole process is going. So we're seeing it as a team effort. So like now you're individual, but as you grow, you have more. You have like an editor, you have like a, I don't know, script writer or like a researcher before the guest comes on, and how we make it much easier for all these people to collaborate much faster and have more fun doing so. Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. And also you said that you're focused on like the process, right? The behind the scenes of like, here, let's figure out a way to reward creators for the work that they're doing behind the scenes. Cause as I shared with you before we started recording, like on average, it takes me, I record an episode, it's anywhere between an hour and an hour and a half. And then for the editing process from start to finish, probably 4 to 5 hours per episode that I spend like going through everything, taking out, little sound spikes, somebody coughs or something like that, going through and making notes of like the chapters and also like, clips that I can cut and post on social media, and then going to, cutting those clips, putting them together, posting them on social media. Yeah, it takes a lot of time, man. It takes like 4 to 5 hours per episode. So
you're not alone, right? Because
God, no.
We've spoken to folks that are quite influential. So like we have, our community already has folks who are like quite influential in the content creation space. So we have folks who are big on YouTube, a couple of million followers, a couple of folks on, Twitter, a couple of folks on TikTok with a couple of million followers. And basically all of them went through that and are still going through some of that too. And even beyond the stage, another part of the whole dimension of the problem becomes burnout, because creators are actually going through so much burnout. And it's like, you actually care about telling your stories and being out there and sharing more with your audience, but it's really painful sometimes to be like doing that consistently every single day. And sometimes it gets to a point where you don't feel like doing it. Sometimes you need a break. Sometimes you need to like disconnect. Sometimes you need a way to like pretty much make you come back excited every single week, looking forward to like the next episode. And we think by collaborating, by actually doing all the tools to make it super easy for creators to create content, we can actually predict and preempt burnout before it happens because we have the data.
Really interesting. Love that aspect of it. And last question before I ask you some questions about the process is, you said YouTubers, you said podcasters, you said, different content creators. So like YouTubers, podcasters, who else would be, interested or could get value from this platform?
Folks who have newsletters, like who write about newsletter, those are folks, on TikTok, who talk about business. So what we're seeing, most of our users right now, or community members, are typically tied around B2B content or B2B or like business or tech. So like storytelling, and pretty much what you're doing is essentially in that regard, like talking about different people going through their different experiences. So that's the kind of people that we are seeing coming through the community and everything. So far our community of like 70, 80 plus content creators who have cumulatively around 6 million followers together across platforms.
Cool.
So,
Awesome. And so I was going to ask you a couple questions about like where you're at in terms of the startup. Like how long have you been doing it? Are you, are you making certain amount of revenue? Where are you at with your sort of fundraising round? And then, once you quickly answer that, I want to quickly dive into just how did you approach this startup differently than you approached your other ones? Because I think that's important. Like what lessons did you take from your other 3 or 4 startups and all the other projects? And how did you approach this one differently? So quickly on like where you're at, and then, how you approach this differently.
Yeah. So where we're at right now is, what we're working on now is as a result of like a quick pivot we did in January. So basically we started this whole thing in January, like scaling what we're doing now, but before then we're doing something else. So right now we raised money from a couple of angel investors last November. We're not raising right now, but we'll be raising soon, like a seed round. So that's exciting. And also we're actually hiring. So we're bringing on a creator to join the team as a creator in residence, and like another software engineer besides myself to also help speed things up on the development front and move much faster. Right. So that's where things are right now on the company front. When it comes to how like lessons learned between what we're doing now and the previous things, I think now picking up the playbook of when you build it, they don't just show up. So like essentially what we're doing with the community essentially is building a huge audience base of all the content creators who will be using the software product once it's out there. So we don't have to like spend a ton of time or money trying to figure out how to get more of them once we like open up the software. So the software is still like in beta, still like being built. And So that's how we're approaching it differently. I also optimize for co-founders because I mean, one of my last startup, I like a co-founder dispute that was not really nice. It was very like crazy, and basically, I want to make sure I'm actually working with a co-founder I actually care about and actually think that is going to be in this for the long run, not just like to make a quick buck and leave. So that's my current co-founder is like the person who is I think the right person to be working with on what we're doing now. So we're first of all best friends before second of all co-founders. It's like we have this whole system where we help each other out and like build something meaningful together. So that's a lesson that I was learned over there. Another lesson is you don't start like building. How do we call it? So build your software, but then don't have any emotional attachment to the software. What I mean by that is most people, like particularly engineers or people who are technical, who build stuff or who design stuff, have this huge emotional attachment to what they just built because of the fact that this is my baby, is pretty
Yeah, it
so
spent so
exciting.
much time and effort
Yeah.
and drank so
Yeah,
many Red Bulls to get this
I
done.
know,
Like,
right? I mean, ultimately, it is the users who are going to like say whether it's meaningful is full of shit, and essentially you want to make sure you're just like not too attached to it, and that you're just like always like asking people who are using it, okay, so what do you think? How do we improve this? And keep, I mean, don't have any ego whatsoever when it comes to that. Just listen, and when you see people keep repeating the same pointer, make a change over there.
mhm.
Just keep changing it, and because ultimately the users are going to keep using the product, and if they like it, they're going to tell your friends about it too. So it's like you just want to make sure that you don't like try and be stubborn about what you're building. You just have to just try and listen to market
Right.
essentially.
Yeah, of course. Because it's not going to
Yeah.
be, even if you do, like, very, very rare, even if you were to get it 100% right and you
Hmm.
were to launch something, it's not going to stay
No,
like that. It's going
no.
to evolve. It's going to grow. You're going to add new features. Like, you're
Yeah.
going to, in order to, keep the company going, you should be talking to the users, getting feedback and changing things as you go to make sure that you're adding as much value as possible and giving them the product. So, so definitely a few really good lessons that you've taken from your, other experiences to make sure that this one, you're setting the foundation
Hmm.
to, to increase the likelihood that this startup is successful, which
Yeah.
is
We're
which is
we're
great.
aiming for that $1 billion mark. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think any tech startup is like aiming for that that $1 billion
I know,
mark.
but this one, I'm trying to make sure that from zero to one billion moves faster than typical. So,
Right.
um, but then it's not just about the money. Again, I already told you. So I think it's more the impact. So the money to me is more of like a way to give back to. I mean, right now we're focused on content creators and making sure that you're having the best times ever and actually getting rewarded for all the. I mean, time spent, money spent getting their equipment, all of that. We think there should be something there that automatically rewards the right people for like doing the right thing and helping share all these stories online. So we see ourselves like, I mean, building a creator ecosystem much more to sort of like increase the market size much bigger than what it currently is today. It's like we can like build something meaningful for creators all over the world. Because I mean, I know so many people are going through really interesting like journeys in Ghana and like other countries, but then they cannot share that because it's like what's the word, I mean, why do I spend like 4 hours a day or 4 hours not like per episode changing that, or why do I spend like 2 hours writing this newsletter, like what is in there for me? And if we can flip the script somehow to make them feel like, oh, there's some sort of reward for just, I mean, sharing your story and giving out your best work. I think the stories online or the stories that are going to be told are going to be exceptional and actually help inspire a whole new generation of people who come up with crazy ideas to like move us to like Mars and beyond and all that stuff. So yeah.
Love it, man. Absolutely love it. And I mean, as a creator, if there's anything that I could do to help, I mean, you and I have offline already talked
Hmm.
about, me joining the community and whatnot. And if there's any, you have any questions or want to ask me about anything, super happy to help out any way that I can. And yeah, let's move into like just the last segment here. It's a question that I ask everybody. I mean, we've been through a lot in your story, and the question I ask everybody, every guest on the podcast is, what would be your advice for somebody that wants to get more out of their life? Somebody who's where they're at, they're like, I'm not totally happy. I have a dream, or I have, some sort of life that I want to live. I want to get more out of life, but I just haven't taken action yet. What would be your one piece of advice for somebody like that?
I think my advice for someone who wants to do more with their lives and hasn't yet taken action would be first of all, take action. Because the reason why most likely they haven't taken action is because they are comfortable with what's happening, but they don't like it. But then, I mean, for your life to become much better, you have to change and move things, and that is not going to be as fun. For example, like if you wanted to, I don't know, become the next Joe Rogan, you have to start that first episode. You have to keep going, even though you're not getting as many views or you're not figuring out a way to get money in the bank. You still have to keep going, and that is not comfortable. But if the goal is to become the next Joe Rogan, you have to do it. You don't just get to that point without putting in the effort and without taking the first step. So I think that my advice is take the first step. I know it's scary. It's like out of this world. You could lose everything. There's high risk in there, but I mean, be optimistic about, okay, so what could go right? What if this goes right? What actually does that mean for me? And focus on what could go right. And if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. Move on to the next thing. Don't obsess about what could go wrong and to the point that you never actually get anything started.
Great. Love that perspective, my friend. Think about what could go right. I mean, I think we think about what could go wrong all the time, and we do get obsessed with it, and then we don't move because we're so paralyzed about all of the possibilities. But when we shift the perspective and say, what could go right? Where could this lead me to? Right? A whole different, a whole different number of possibilities opens up, and it's shifting from sort of that pessimistic or negative point of view to that like positive sort of growth mindset point of view. So I really like that. And earlier you had mentioned, celebrate the mistakes. Like it's fun making mistakes because you're learning, right? So I think that's a big part of it as well, because things are going to go wrong. Even if you focus on what could go right, sure, things are going to go wrong. You're going to mess up, whatever, but like it's all a learning process. So be graceful with what you're doing and focus on what could go right, be graceful when you fail, and take what you can learn and make something else.
I totally agree with that one. I think one thing school didn't really do well was that it made people like fear mistakes, because you guys want to get like straight A's and everything.
So true.
Yeah. So I think you have to do some on learning, because once you make mistakes, that's when you're actually learning. You don't learn by getting everything right. You learn by making all the mistakes and improving. So
yeah, because if you're getting it right all the time, there is a reason, but there's not. We're taught that there's no reason to really look at it and think about how you got it right. Right? It's only when you get it wrong that you're like, why is it not right? Why is it wrong? How do I actually adjust to make it right? Where you should really adjust that frame of thinking and say, what was the process and what can I learn from that to be better?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Perfect, man. Well, thank you so much. I really love that perspective. And I want to thank you so much for leaning into discomfort and vulnerability and sharing your story and, helping somebody out there, whether they're going to be involved in a startup or presentations or something completely different. Just really want to thank you for your time and sharing your story.
Yeah, super excited to join you, Adam. I'm looking forward to the next episodes.
Yeah, me too. And I'm really looking forward to, what happens with your company and where you and your co-founder take Sally. I'm, going to stay connected, keep an eye on it. And I mean, join the community as well. It sounds like a fun place to be.
Yep. All right.
Excited. All right, man. We'll stay in touch. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you really enjoyed it and that it inspired you on your journey to living your best life. Now make sure to check out the show notes below for a rundown of today's show with all the important links, such as where to find the guest online and important resources that they may have mentioned. Also make sure to share this episode with a friend or family member and subscribe so you get the notifications when new episodes are released. I absolutely love hearing feedback from you guys, so I encourage you to share a review on the platform you're listening on and let me know what your biggest takeaway was from today's episode. Now it's time to go out and build the life of your dreams one step at a time. And remember, the only way to be comfortable is to be uncomfortable first.